What's up, guys? Dan here at Coalcracker Bushcraft, coming to you from our school property here on this nice, cool October morning. Just beautiful out, so nice. Hoodie weather, got a nice flannel on, good to go. Gonna have some fun in the woods today. And with all that cool weather though, comes campfires. And with campfires comes a discussion that I had with a lot of people over the last few classes, and that is campfire rings and reflectors and windbreaks, and do you need them, don't you need them, what should they be like, and all that good stuff. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. Short and sweet and simple and to the point, just like all our videos here on Coalcracker Bushcraft. So all right, let's just roll right into it. So let's first start out with fire rings. What is a fire ring? So a fire ring is just a containment device in order to keep our fire from spreading outward. That's literally all that is. Now that can come in a lot of different materials. We can look at just the metal ones that people put in their backyards. That contains our fire and doesn't allow it to spread. You can use rocks, which is generally what you're gonna see most bushcraft and survivalist people. They're gonna get rocks, put them around in a nice circle or a rectangle or whatever shape, light their fire inside. Those rocks are going to stop the fire from spreading outward. You can even use bigger wet pieces of wood. I've done that in the past already, and it burns in between, and then you just got to make sure the logs are out before you leave the scene. So small fires, I always tell people 1 to 2 foot in diameter at the most. 2's like super max, okay, is more than enough for all of your needs in bushcraft and survival. You don't need anything bigger than that. So now with all that said, number one most people do when they're going to start their fires, they run through the woods, they're digging stones, and they're making that fire ring. But you might want to hold on 1 second. If you watched any of my old videos, you've seen times that I literally have made fires without any type of fire ring. And why is that? Well, it depends on the time of the year and the situation itself. If it's going to be a one and done fire, you're just out and about in a wooded area, it is wet, not super dry, we're not worried about the fire spreading out, and we're gonna make something small, we're gonna be with it the whole time, and then we're gonna move on. Going and gathering rocks and creating this fire ring is somewhat useless. All right, so here is an example of this no ring fire, okay? The area itself, you could tell that we scraped a lot of the leaves and debris away from this when we had this fire, okay? And it was a wet condition, so it's not super dry. I'm not worried about the fire spreading out and catching the woods on fire. Wet, lots of dirt around it. Make my fire. When I'm done with it, make sure it's out, and I'm on my way. I don't disturb any rocks, I don't have to leave rings behind, and I'm good to go. So it's quick, it's easy and efficient, and in this case it works out just fine. All right, so here is a fire ring made out of stone, okay? Very simple, shorter stones, okay? Not very big. So diameter wise on this, it's a little bit off of a circle, but we're looking at about 16 inches, okay, round, a little bit longer this way, so maybe 16 by 18, and to me that is like the perfect size ring itself. Now, if you notice, this area is a little bit different. There's lots of leaves on the ground, okay, and this area here is a very well visited camp, so it's something that is used quite often. So taking the extra time to build a containment area is more important in a setting like this. Plus, we also camp at this area. So anytime that you're sleeping around the campfire, you need to make sure if that fire is going or there's going to be embers left in it that are still hot, you need a fire ring. You need to be able to contain that, because you're going to of course be sleeping. If that thing starts to spread and you don't wake up right away, not a good scenario. So adding a ring like this. Now, a couple key factors with this you want to remember. Number one, I just said about size. It's not real big, right? About 16 to 18 inches in diameter for this itself, and you're going to notice that the rocks aren't super high, okay? We don't need really high rocks unless we're going to have a really big fire and the wood's way up here and it can fall out. So you need to match the height of your rocks and your fire lay ring itself to what the fire is going to be burning. And again, for most of the things that we do out here, it's going to be smaller, maybe wrist size sticks at the most that we're just laying on top. Maybe we're about this high. That should not be overflowing and rolling outside the campfire at any time. So a ring like this is absolutely perfectly set up. Next, you also want to notice we're not digging deep down ditches here in this fire pit, okay? Fire pits that get dug down real deep generally have very bad airflow, and they don't burn as effectively as pits that are just placed directly on the ground. So it's just something else to keep in mind. All right, so let's start with wind blocks. So wind blocks, they are a very viable option for campfires in windy conditions, but the reality is that I can tell you from my experience, at least in the Northeast woodlands, that even if the wind's real heavy, you can adjust your fire by moving it to another location, moving your camp to a slightly different location, and allowing the terrain to be your wind block itself. So what I mean by that is, if you were in a big wide open area and you have to have your camp there and the wind is whipping through, putting something up like a small wall, or in this case we have a big rock behind our fire area. So our fire areas would be out front here on either one of these. As the wind blows through, this is helping block the wind. The same would go for if the wind was coming across very hard this way. You can always use a wind block, keep your fire here, and this will die down on how much wind actually hits that fire, and it will make the wood burn a little bit slower, because we know that air is going to force the heat to grow a little bit more, and then the wind would also help push a lot of that heat away. So this is viable. It's a little bit of pain to build. You do have to keep an eye on it if it's wood. Stone, on the other hand, not so much. And the reason I'm saying keep an eye on it, because this can catch on fire. So you want to make sure you're using green wood or very damp, almost rotted type wood in the back for something like this. But again, eastern woodlands, I have used these in the past. We have built a lot of these in the past, real big ones, real long ones. I have not seen that much of a difference with or without them, so we really just stopped using them altogether. And then the last thing, which is set up identical to this, is what we would call a heat reflector. Now you can't, from my research, actually reflect heat waves. So you can't take heat that's traveling in this direction and make it bounce backwards. It just doesn't work like that. So why do people say that? Well, I think more so because when you put something here, this absorbs heat. So this starts to heat up, and if you have your shelter out in this area and the fire is trapped in between, you will generally feel a warmer fire in your shelter with this here. But that might be also a little bit because this is also blocking some wind and not allowing the heat to just go out this way if the wind blows. So if the wind blows, it's the heat's being absorbed here and not just going out into the wild wilderness. So as far as heat reflectors, again, it's something that we've tried a lot in the past. We've just got away from them. We realized, hey, if you throw an extra couple sticks on the fire, you're going to be fine. And in windy conditions, if your shelter's set up correctly, that is actually blocking the wind, that is your wind block for your campfire. You don't have to worry about building something like this. All right, so there you go. That is all my hot tips for today when it comes to fire rings and containment, and then those all mysterious wind blocks and heat reflectors. So if you like this video, hit like and subscribe down below. You can also check us out over at Coalcrackerbushcraft.com for all our classes, our blog, and our merchandise. And then until next video, stay in the woods.